Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, or the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares. Mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and their strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. When my inner me. Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle. Because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall. But in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps isn't conspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity. Like living in a fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares. Whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading, look, they don't even need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty. Cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. Said it got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets to blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 2020. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty. Cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on song.
What's happening, good people? Welcome to RSTV. Your favorite show on the platform. You don't know it yet, but you'll figure it out. Anyway, I'm just talking trash. I am Kalonji Changa. Good to be here with you all today. As always, we try to bring you that critical political action. We try to make sure that we are on the right side historically, politically, and our goal and our aim is to make sure that we know that we are going to win. We will win in spite of ourselves, as the OG would say. Today, I'm here to, first of all, I'm here to say peace. It's always a beautiful thing. When we talk about revolution, folks always think of war, but revolution, to paraphrase Che Guevara, is an act of love. So that's why we're here based off of pure love. Yes, I have a special guest today, but before I get into our guest and to talk about a very important topic, I want to remind you all that a couple things. We have the new article from Inquest out. Um, Inquest is the Harvard Law-based magazine. Um, I've been doing a partnership with Dr. Joy James. We've done 4 different articles, and this would be our final installment. It's called The Rubik's Cube of Cop City, Part One: Colonized Cities and State Criminality. The Rubik's Cube of Cop City, Colonized Cities and State Criminality. Part One just dropped. Definitely go check that out. The link will be in the body of this work here. Also, on Thursday, we'll be dropping part two of that article because it was so long, and not only long, it is packed with information, some information you know, some you haven't heard. Serious research. Definitely shout out to partner Dr. James on, on her research and time that she put in as well. Also, I want to remind you all that the latest RSTV is also out, and it's called Resisting Cop City Corporate and Clergy Colonizers. Resisting Cop City Corporate and Clergy Colonizers. That one is also co-hosted by Dr. James and myself, and we have two um, very important guests. One is a relative of one of the major donors of Cop City. Yes, I'm talking about one of the relatives of a major donor of Cop City. He's breaking down his family's involvement, along with a young clergyman, young minister here in in the Atlanta area, who wants to tell it all as far as the clergy's involvement and complicity being complicit in the building of this paramilitary piece. I'm guaranteeing you, I'm putting, you know, the wages, the bets, whatever you want to do. These two particular pieces are pertinent. They're necessary, and there are no holds barred. And yeah. So you should go run and check them out. So you can check out the video right here on RSTV Black Power Media. And again, the articles are available on Inquest. Now, uh, today I wanted to bring on one of my favorite elders, someone who I think it is her first time joining the RSTV platform. She's been on Black Power Media several times, and I had to work my way up to get her on RSTV because I had to prove that I was as thorough as I thought I might have been. So she's agreed to come on and join us today. She is a longtime veteran freedom fighter. Um, she is an author, one of my favorite poets. Um, she's worked relentlessly on behalf of folks such as the brother that you see behind me, Mumia Abu Jamal, and she happens to be the daughter of literary icon Richard Wright. So I want to welcome today for the first time to RSTV, Mama Julia Wright. Mama Julia, what's happening? How you doing?
Thank you for having me on, Brother Kalonji. And I send back all the compliments to you and to your movement in Cup City. But I'll speak about that later if you allow me.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah. This isn't really an interview. We're co-hosting. How about that? So you riding shotgun today on RSTV. But but for folks who may not be familiar with you, they might be new on the block and they haven't caught you on any of our other shows, or anywhere in the world where you've been doing your work. Um, please give us a bio of you and how you came into this movement.
um, uh, I was working in Ghana on the invitation of Kwame Nkrumah. Um, Kwame Nkrumah asked my late husband and myself to edit the French version of the Spark in Accra, which basically carried the voices of the liberation movements there. So we were honored to sit at the feet of icons like Amilcar Cabral, Eduardo Mondlane, Augusto Neto, and I learned journalism from them. I mean, what more can you ask for? I was arrested with my husband and my baby daughter in my arms at gunpoint by Ghanaian soldiers on the pay of the CIA in 1996, deported. We were negotiated for as hostages. Yes. And landed in Paris. And that is when my first contact with Algeria, personally, autobiographically, was made because I joined Kathleen Cleaver, who became my friend, and Eldridge and Emery in Algiers for the first cultural Pan-African festival there. And I'll always remember the Casbah, which is the ghetto there in Algiers, and the first floor where we met all the liberation movements, and I was translating for them. Another contact with Algeria, since we're going to be speaking about the murder of a young Algerian, so all my memories crystallize around Algeria these days, is in 1968, I accompanied James Foreman to Algiers to meet the wife of Frantz Fanon, Josie, and other important contacts of Frantz Fanon, because James Foreman wanted to write a biography on Frantz Fanon, a biography which I tried to obtain and which, to my surprise, is still not published. So that's something for us to investigate. And then the last connection I make with Algeria around the murder of little Nahel, and we'll come to this murder, is my own father. Because my father self-expatriated himself to Paris with my mother and me in 1947. And there he was caught between McCarthyism, because he had been part of the American Communist Party, and the fact that the French government did not want him to interfere with their French foreign policy. So when the Algerian War came, my father was in favor of the liberation movement there, knew their leaders, would go to cafes in Paris with them, but could not publicly denounce the war. And he was caught up in terrible provocations that I speak about in a recent article on the part of the CIA to try to get him deported from Paris. So history keeps repeating itself, and at the heart of it was the fact that France needed to cling to this colony, Algeria, so rich in gas and oil. And I do believe that the hatred of the Algerians and the Arabs is anchored in the fact that how could this vermin be so rich? You know. So coming to little Nahel, he's 17 years old. He's 2 generations after Algerian independence. He has French citizenship. He lives in a dirt poor suburb, Nanterre, and he is so happy because he's been picked at random to be part of a rap, sung by a quite well-known rapper in France. And we have that rap, so those are the last images of him. And he's so excited. You can see in the rap, he's elated because he's no longer invisible. The whole backdrop of his miserable existence is being filmed. 25 is this.
No, I was going to say, because of the fact that there are some folks who aren't familiar with Nahel, if you could, give some backstory on, I know you're giving on him, right? But who is Nahel and why is he important to what's going on right now in France and the world in general? Because we know that some things take place, but again, there are folks who might have been under a rock and didn't hear what was going on. Yeah, so give us a little backstory.
Yeah, so just to finish this story, 25 days later, he's shot down by a police officer. He's driving a car. He's asked to stop. He doesn't stop because he's afraid. You know, the usual story, driving while Black or Arab. He's beaten 3 times on the head. His foot hits the accelerator because he's dizzy from the beating. The car starts, and the police shoot him in the heart, in the chest. Okay, so that is the beginning of all the events that took place that are unprecedented, that the mainstream media call riots, and that everybody else calls upheavals, protests, rebellion. And you asked me, why is it important? And, you know, I'm an old Panther, I'm a veteran Panther, so I have 10 points. Okay. Okay. The first point is, on both sides of the Atlantic, youth narratives are suppressed. Like listening to the youth in Atlanta on June 6th and listening to the racialized youth in the suburbs of France. It's the same language. They speak 2 different languages, but it's the same political language. We are not heard. Therefore, we act out. And I think that's very exciting. 2, we discover after Nahel's death that indeed France has its own cop city. I didn't dream of that. It's hidden that fact very carefully in a hidden part of France, and that is fascinating. Looked it up on Wikipedia. Uh, um, uh, American Marines connected to AFRICOM go train there. NATO trains there, trains French officers there. And that is connected to another thing I'm fascinated about. Just as in Atlanta, the police were offered Cop City as a bonus because they were so disgruntled after George Floyd, loss of image, etc. In France, in the same way, the police have a very low morale. They're very disgruntled because they don't like having to police the ghettos in France. They feel they're at war. They feel they're not given enough equipment. Another thing that we should pay attention to everywhere is, why was Nahel assassinated in cold blood? Because in 2017, a law was passed in France enabling for the first time the police to be armed and giving them the power to shoot if there is a refusal to obey an order. Wow. So after that, 5 times more killings occurred. Now, the interesting thing about that law is that a socialist government enabled it. And that makes us think back to, for instance, I'm just giving one example, the government of Pennsylvania, democratic, and it's bowing under FOP pressure for Mumia, Another fourth instance of our interest in what's happening in France now is Israeli involvement. A very little known fact, because he tried to hide it, but it was revealed. Macron, the president, reached out to Israel right after Nahel was killed and there were protests. He reached out to Israel to get advice on crowd control. And there is an axis, an alliance between the extreme right, controlled by Le Pen, and 75% of active police officers vote for Le Pen today. Okay, so Le Pen, a party called Les Républicains, the Republicans, Morocco, which is a sort of a very, very close to France, a neo-colony very close to France, and Israel. And this axis is trying to take power in France, right? And another thing is, when you listen to the youth in the suburbs, when they are allowed to speak, because they're not always allowed to speak, because their internet accounts were censored during the events, that if you can get through to them, they say they would like now to see a coordination between liberation fronts, grassroots liberation fronts, not political parties. They do not believe any longer between united fronts of political parties. So that is very advanced thinking, and they are uniting now with ecology fronts, very much so, in the style, in the way that you are in Atlanta, right? Another point is, of course, how these events in France are enabling the criminalization of protest, very much in the way it's happening in Atlanta. Another point is how important Nahel's death has become at this juncture to all us Pan-Africanists. Because I just laugh. President Macron has the audacity. He did it beginning in early June, so that was before Nahel's death. He has the audacity to apply for membership of BRICS. I mean, okay. So I think, and I will just go out on a limb here and say here, that I do believe that Nahel and all the others who came before him, and there are many, will not have died for nothing. If France is officially rejected from BRICS next month, and Macron has to go back to Paris, disgraced. Because BRICS cannot admit Nahel's France. It is against its grain. It would be impossible. So another thing is, I would like to say that if we put Nahel's death in an international context, I would like to put Nahel's death in an inter-youth context and say, revolutionary youth of the world, unite. Because the same language across borders, the same dreams across borders, the same courage across borders are inspiring the world. So, yes. And another thing that may have escaped the notice of some people, but remember Buffalo. That guy that's white supremacist, I haven't read his manifesto and probably won't, but they say he was inspired by the Great Replacement theory. Well, that theory was the brainchild of a Frenchman who was sympathetic to the Nazis after World War II, during Vichy. And the whole Le Penist movement, the extreme right movement of Le Pen, for whom 75% of policemen are now voting today, are born of that same Vichy pro-Nazi theory,
We're not
the
surprised.
great
Yes.
replacement theory. Yeah, yeah.
So, funny, I mean, a couple of my comrades actually lost family members in that supermarket in Buffalo. So I want to remember them as well.
Oh,
At two different ones. And so that definitely hits home, as you say, right? I want to, because there's a lot to unpack, but
mhm.
for folks again who aren't familiar, we're talking about 17-year-old Nahel who was murdered by French police out in Paris or outside of Paris. What's the area?
Nanterre,
Nanterre.
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 Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So after this brutal murder, which we've seen plenty of around the globe, because like you said, internationalizing it, because sometimes we get caught up in our own little colonies and our cubby holes, but this is an international issue. Um, the youth rebelled. Let's talk about the streets of France. Like, what took place? How did it spark off? Was it, apparently it wasn't accepted, it wasn't taken well. What are some of the things that took place? Because again, um, keeping in mind that news is often the flames are usually doused, and that's why it's important for us to have programs like we have. But tell us, give us from on the ground, what did
Oh, yeah.
actually took place?
Well, yeah, yeah. I don't want to say for myself. I'll just give you the words of a young. Um, he's Muslim. I don't know where he comes from. I was listening to him only yesterday. He's from an ecologist movement because there's now more and more unity between social justice movements in the suburbs and ecology. And that is very new. There's an intersection. And I was listening to him, and he was saying there are three types of violence. There's the mother violence, and the mother violence is from the state against us. The second violence is our revolutionary violence against them. And the third violence is their repression of our rebellion. And he says, and that is, wow, I think this youth is so mature. He's only 21, and he says, they are stealing our words from us. We own our violence. So that is the level at which they think. If you can have access to the video of the last images of Nile, you will see the backdrop of what happens. There was, for instance, I'll give you an example, because it's always the same, it's a repetition. In 2005, two little kids, teenagers aged 15 or so, both Algerians, called Zined and Bouna, were returning from a football match, right? And a group of police officers started slurring them and threatening them, the usual. And they were scared because they know how these things end up. So they started running, and the police chased them, and they got so terrorized, the kids, they took refuge in an electric substation and were electrocuted there, right? So that sparked um, 3 weeks, I believe, of rebellion. Uh, and okay, so you asked me what the atmosphere there is like. They feel that a war is being waged against them. It's war. And that is such a good analysis because it is an unfinished war.
Yes.
The Algerian War is not over.
Right.
The French have not uh, uh, recognized their war crimes. They haven't paid reparations for the nuclear tests they conducted in the south, in the Sahara south of Algeria. Um, it's unfinished. And they imported, after the Second World War, they imported Algerians to rebuild France at starvation wages, living, how do you say, warehousing them in these ghettos that have not improved, really, basically. And it's just, I mean, neocolonialism is too kind a word.
Yeah, no, and as you were speaking, you know, because you was talking about an unfinished war, capitalism and imperialism is war. That is an act of war. It has it. You can't have capitalism without violence. You know what I'm saying? Capitalism, violence is the violence and oppression is the main ingredients in capitalism, in imperialism. You know, they can package it however they want to. You know, it's wild because I was speaking to some young folk uh, maybe about a couple weeks ago, and one was saying that they wanted to go to school in France or whatever, so on and so forth, and now it's looking violent, so on and so forth. And I'm just like, you know, France has been violent from the outskirts. You know, I think that they make through propaganda. You would think that Paris is for lovers, and you know the French are just such good people, and so on and so forth. Yeah, when in reality,
City of lights, city of
right?
lights.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's the city where you get your lights knocked out if you're too dark. You know, so I think that would be closer to reality. You mentioned Israel, and it's wild because you know when it comes to you know you talked about Macron reaching out to Israel for um, advice on crowd control. Of course, you know here in Atlanta we have Gilly, which is the Georgia International Law Enforcement Exchange here on the Georgia State campus, where for the past 30 years they've sent um, officers from Georgia to train in Israel, and there's Israeli soldiers who train officers, police officers here in the Georgia area. Um, and it's ironically enough, well, not even ironically, because we know what time it is located in the Andrew Young Policy Center inside of Georgia State. You know,
Mm.
so folks jumped up and down saying, we can't believe that Andy Young is pro cop city. Gilly's headquarters is in the building that bears his name. And many folks don't even know that. When you talk about the Atlanta police unions, um, uh, the Atlanta Police Foundation, the Atlanta Police Foundation in Gilly is literally about a mile and some change or less than a mile away from each other. So it's not like, you know, we're talking about this is over here, that's over here. So the connections are clear, you know. But you talk about, you know, Israel, the United States, and all these different countries, you know, when it comes to war, you can always find their fingerprints. When it comes to oppression and violence, you can always find the fingerprints of the French all throughout Africa. you know what I mean, extorting folks, with their banking system and their enslavement tactics, so it is it is only intelligent that the youth rise up, because traditionally the youth have led uprisings and rebellions historically. They say,
Yes.
yeah, elders for counsel, youth for war. I ask you, because I know that you've been involved, you've seen, your eyes have seen more than mine have, and I've seen a lot. I ask you, because we mentioned the climate. How do you feel, um, you know, seeing so much in your lifetime? How do you feel about the current state of the youth, and are you encouraged or inspired to see the youth continuing to rebel?
Oh yes. I I I am very inspired by this month of June. I think as an elder, uh, the youth have taken power during June 2023 on both sides of the Atlantic. Because being an elder, I have a bit of a long vision, I've acquired it. And I see that in Atlanta and Nanterre, um, there has been history made. Um, and I have these young people to thank for making me think about what history is. Because I was very naive when I was young. Um, I was brought up in a French school because my father took me to be brought up in French schools. And we were taught, the Charterhouse of Parma by Stendhal. And I'll always remember the teacher reading to us that little paragraph where the hero, Fabrice, is walking up a hill, gets to the top, looks down, sees a pile of freshly killed bodies. And then Stendhal says, Fabrice del Dongo did not realize that he had stumbled upon the Battle of Waterloo. And I thought, wow, isn't it marvelous that one can stumble upon history? I thought, I was very young. I thought, maybe I will stumble upon history. And I did indeed stumble upon history. But as I stumbled upon history in later years, I realized that Stendhal was only one of those liberals, because actually we don't stumble upon history, we make history.
Right.
And we are producers of history. And that is my answer to DeSantis. You can take history books away from us as much as you want. Go ahead. You can't take from us our power of producing it. We produce it with our bare hands. We produce it as we go along, live, in real time. We produce it with our revolutionary love, which you are incapable of. And we produce it because we are the people.
Right.
And that is what the youth of Atlanta and the youth of Nanterre have done.
And this is important that you're saying that. You mentioned DeSantis. For us, when we talk about CRT, it's not critical race theory. It has to be critical revolutionary theory. And the fact is, when we talk about our freedom fighters, if we don't make history, we take history, you know. So we have to, and I agree with all the words you said. I think that it is imperative for us in this particular hour to make sure that we are, as you said, producing content, revolutionary content, not content for, for the internet, not content for the state, but producing content that will outlast and surpass whatever books they attempt to ban. Because there'll come a time when they'll be trying to use them books to keep warm.
It makes me think of those mice on treadmills.
Yes.
We're keeping them on a treadmill. We go so fast, producing our history. They can't follow us.
No. And that's why they try to eliminate us, because it's easier that way. Because what white supremacy and globalization, when there's no control, it's you have to either destroy or lock it up, put it away, like in the case of Mumia. You know what I'm saying? You have to murder him, like Nahel. So we're clear about the tactics. Like you said, they haven't changed. They've become more advanced, if we dare say that. Or I wouldn't even say more advanced. I would say more archaic and more barbaric, because it's just a new form, of destruction. You wrote 2 articles in regards to the case of Nahel and what's going on, the burning in France, which we applaud. We say that it's that's what comes with it. As Imam Jamil H. Rap Brown would say, this is what comes with war. Tell us about your articles and why folks should, when they finish checking out this video, go read them.
I wrote 2 articles, but mainly it was important to let voices speak in the articles that had not been allowed to speak, because Emmanuel Macron decided with his Ministry of the Interior to censor the internet early on after Nahel's death, which was totally unprecedented and undemocratic, of course. And I think the Interior Minister even said, we're going to burn up their accounts. We're going to burn up the kids' accounts. So I realized that the best thing I could do at this point, from such a distance, would be to give the mic to those who would soon be censored if I didn't. So that's what I did all throughout the second article. So there's some very poignant words in that article of, well, some didn't want to be named because there is fear now. A young Kezian Huissier who had underwent torture with the severing of his optic nerve. I think you know about him because I've written about him too, in Martinique, the native island of Frantz Fanon. His case is still ongoing in France because although he was tortured, he's charged of assaulting the police. Classic, right? So I just thought, if I can do something with my journalism, it's to give the mic to those who might not be able to speak. So that article can be now found on PANAF Newswire since yesterday.
So we will actually post it in the body of of this video for folks who want to go read this the latest article by Julia Wright. Mama Julia, is always grand for you to come on. I'm glad you finally made it on RSTV because
Yes.
we've been on several platforms together. I Mix What I Like, of course, Black Power Media as a whole, and things around Mamiya. But it's always good to come to my little apartment over here, and on the platform, But I want to before you go, for folks, because we did mention your father earlier, and I think that it would probably be a disservice if we don't um, give him a few minutes. So, for folks who are not familiar with your father, if you don't mind giving us an introduction, as if, for those who may have never heard of him and his works, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, my father was Richard Wright. He grew up, he was born in Mississippi on a plantation near Mississippi, Roxy. He grew up very poor, was hungry day and night, physically hungry. Also had a hard time with a father who left the family, a grandmother who was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he had his fair share of beatings because he would not enter religion. He writes all this in Black Boy. And I must say that after the lynching of George Floyd, I reread both Black Boy and Native Son, which is the narrative of a youth, like maybe a youth in today's Nanterre who's down and out and angry and doesn't know how to vent his rage because he's not given any language to and is not being listened, and by accident kills a white woman. So I reread those two after George Floyd's lynching, and they had total new life for me. They leapt up in a whole new way to me. And I would just like to end, I'm glad you asked, to pay tribute to my great uncle, Silas Hoskins, whose lynching was depicted in chapter 2 of Black Boy, and whose memorialization I was able to organize. I don't know, bad word. Last year, at last. But why is it I was never sensitized to this point to my great uncle's lynching described in Black Boy until after George Floyd's own lynching? So even, the rereading of books in the light of what happens is also an interesting thing to discuss. I think somebody has been speaking about the rereading of Fire next time, since it's the birthday of that book, in the light of what has happened since. It's very interesting to reread our classics, our Black classics, in the light of, and the prescience. They knew because it's always new. the plantation is always here.
Absolutely. Now, thinking back, because when you talk about classics, Native Son was written in what, like 1940s, something like that?
1940, you're right.
Okay, okay. And Black Boy was when?
45.
Okay, okay. So we're talking about um, a book that Native Son is probably about what, 83 years old right now, somewhere around there, close to it.
My math is not good yet.
Okay, so I don't
Yeah.
feel so bad because my math is near there. But but no, so I mean the fact that here it is, and you mentioned rereading these books, um, which were written during World War II for all practical purposes. Both books, one towards the end and one closer to the beginning. Um, and here it is, almost a century later, and you can still see uh, the evidence of lynchings because you still have situations like Nahel, the George Floyds, the Rayshard Brooks, and so many others, the Sandra Blands, and countless others that will be murdered today by police, murdered by police this week, murdered by the state this week, victims of bombings, victims of mass. I don't even know if I want to call it incarceration, mass enslavement, and so on and so forth. Victims of theft, So when we come on this platform and we say that it is a blessing to see resistance still alive and well, particularly amongst the youth, those of you who are watching should understand that it's not just some lofty words. It is our survival. You know what I'm saying? It is to ensure that um, we will win. And I often say we will win because in my soul, I know that we will win. I don't believe that we will win. I don't hope that we'll win. I don't wish that we will win. We will win because we have no choice, and we will continue to resist. So, Mama Julia, appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to having you on again real soon. Thank you for your contributions and to keeping your pen hot because it's always, you're not just, some folks make excuses as to why, what they can do and what they can't do. Bunchy Carter from the Black Panther Party said, if you can't do nothing but spit, then spit. And, you've proven that, that we all have a role to play. And, like I said, we are grateful that you're continuing to bless us with your words, your wisdom. And, we're looking forward to victory together.
Thank you.
Yes. So we will see you again soon. You're checking out.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Free Mumia, and free them all.
Yes, free Mumia, free them all. We have no choice. Continue to fight. In fact, we'll be bringing Mama Julia back on soon and others to talk about Mumia Abu Jamal because it's never enough information out on Mumia, on Kamal Siddiqui, on Faranza Bowers, and so many others who have consistently, Rochelle McGee, and so many others who have continued to fight, Dr. Joy Powell and Imam Jamil, so many others. But anyway, we appreciate you coming on today, Mama Julia. You are checking out RSTV right here on Black Power Media. Make sure you like, subscribe, um, support our efforts, our work. Like I said, you in the body of this video, you can find the latest piece by Mama Julia Wright. You can also find the article Dr. Joy James and I put out, which is the Rubik's Cube of Cop City, Colonized Cities, and State Criminality. That is a two-part piece. The second part will come out tomorrow on Inquest. Um, Also, make sure you check out our latest RSTV, the one prior to this one, Resisting Cop City, Corporate and Clergy Colonizers. You won't be disappointed. Stay on tune, stay on the right side of the barricades. Support our Patreon. When I'm saying our Patreon, I'm talking about what you may see going across the screen for the documentary that our organization put out, which is Organizing is the New Cool. If you like RSTV and all the great interviews that you've seen and the convos, so on and so forth, you definitely want to support Organizing is the New Cool documentary, OITNC. Go to patreon.com/OITNC. We are looking to have this film totally complete for our 20-year anniversary, which will take place next year, June 9th, 2024. Look out for that. Also, Black August weekend is coming up. Excuse me, not Black August weekend, the month of Black August. So we have plenty of content, plenty of things coming up live and direct. Some will be online, so we'll make sure that you can check that out virtually. Also on May 6th, excuse me, I don't know where I'm getting these dates from. Y'all gotta excuse me. August 6th, we will be broadcasting right here on this platform the memorial for Dr. Mutulu Shakur, 2 days before, which would have been his birthday. Make sure 11 a.m. EST, you're checking out this platform for the memorial of and for Dr. Mutulu Shakur. Anyway, stay on point, stay sharp. Again, we will win, and we'll see you soon right here on RSTV. Peace.
Ancestor, I get tired. Ancestor, I get weak. I get weak. Nose, I get warm.